What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video. This is a reaction to 10 things destroying the USA by World According to Briggs, and yeah, it's another reaction to him. To be fair, I just find his videos quite interesting. It's different to what I usually react to, so I mean, it says according to you as well, so I guess it's based off his comment sections, but yeah, sometimes his videos are hit or miss, but I just like how sort of, I don't know, what's the word? He just sort of says it how he feels or whatever. Like, there's no like hiding behind certain things. He'll just say it, either piss people off or whatever. But yeah, we're gonna check this out. Obviously, I'm gonna take it with a grain of salt. I know this is not all gonna be things that are set or it's like opinions and stuff, but I'm just here to see what people say. It's probably gonna be stuff like, I don't know. It's gonna be very political. That's just gonna be the premises of this, but probably about how woke people are and stuff. It's gonna be like the new generation against the old generation, all this sort of stuff, hating each other, how it's changing. But we're gonna see. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not too sure, but let's just check this out. Also, links are in the description to my Patreon if you want to see some more of my videos that I can't post to YouTube for whatever reason. But let's jump into this.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to World According to Briggs and a video created by you. Over the last month, I've been running surveys on Google Surveys and have been asking people what they thought the biggest problems we face in this country and what they feel is destroying the American way of life. I listed 40 popular issues the United States is dealing with these days, like healthcare, inflation, politics, media, social media, and a bunch of other things. I took the findings and brought them to the community tab of World According to Briggs and asked you guys to rank them. There was some good discussions going on those polls. People were talking. Surprisingly, people for the most part were respectful. And I say surprisingly because we get a lot of those political zealots on this channel. You see them in the comment section turning every video and every conversation into some opportunity to slam the other political party. I could be making a video about cities with the worst pizza and you would get them leaving comments about how the pizza sucks because the liberals or the conservatives are trying to kill the cheese and dough industry. I have a theory on why it wasn't that toxic for this question. I think most of us, no matter where you stand politically, you kind of want the best for the country. And so this was an opportunity to tell us what you thought was wrong with it. Okay, so is this the most scientific or statistically correct video? No, it's based on opinion polls of people that watch my videos. We had about 60,000 responses on the community tab, and the surveys I did on Google Surveys got about 4,000 responses. This video, in my opinion, is very interesting. Let's take a look at what you think is wrong with America. Number 10, wealth and greed. Now, there's nothing wrong with being wealthy. I mean, that's part of the American dream. There's an opportunity for everyone to reach the top financially, and it happens all the time. Judging by the comment section, I think a lot of people feel that when people have too much wealth, they hold too much influence over politicians, and it creates economic problems. When you have the top 5% of the economy, they spend 5 to 10% of their income. Then you look at the middle class on down, they spend 90 to 110% of their income just to get by. Of course, in some cases, going into debt. That affects the economy in negative ways, and that's what a lot of people feel our biggest problem is and why we have so many people going in debt, into poverty, and on the streets. Number 9, corporate influence. This has been going on since forever.
Corporate influence, is that like when bigger companies have sort of control or influence over smaller? So would this be like certain news channels will be influenced by the people on top of them paying them? Is that kind of what it is? I think that's what it means, right?
Ever. You got all these.
If that's the case, then I can definitely see that, because
lobbyists in Washington, D.C., and even at the state level, where they basically represent a corporation that wants some things done. And the way they get those things done is they basically approach politicians, give them money for their campaign.
Oh, okay. So it's just a bit different. It's the same sort of thing, but it's in a different way.
Buy them gifts if they want. They grease the wheels to make things happen for the corporation, throwing a lot of money at politicians. The people that felt this was our biggest problem were probably the most vocal portion of our survey. They left a lot of comments, and most of those comments led back to something known as Citizens United. Citizens United is a non-profit conservative group that challenged campaign finance rules. Back in the old days, there were serious limits on what you could donate to a politician. Well, they challenged this and it went all the way to the Supreme Court. Well, the Supreme Court agreed with them. There's a lot that goes into this, but I'm going to broad brush it really quick. Basically, Justice Anthony Kennedy wrote that limiting independent political spending from corporations and other groups violates the First Amendment right to free speech, meaning your money is free speech. So this kind of opened up the floodgates for political donations and money. And if you're giving a politician a whole bunch of money, you're going to want some favors. Yeah. And that's what a lot of people think is one of our biggest problems.
I can see that for sure.
Number 8, Big Pharma.
Does the same thing happen in the UK? I don't know, but I'm going to assume it probably does, just not to the high level that it is in the US because there's so much more money there, but probably happens in a smaller scale here as well.
Big Pharma is the term they give for these giant pharmaceutical companies that make everything from Viagra to the COVID vaccine to everything else. In most countries, they have serious limits on what these companies can charge people for the different drugs. The United States, it's a little murky and they kind of get to do what they want. Again, I'm broad brushing it. There's a lot that goes into this one, but the crux of it is the United States by far has the highest drug prices. You always see things how in Canada you can get like whatever drug for like $12 a pill. In the United States, it's $3,000. There's always something like that. And those aren't just one-offs. This happens with most drugs here in the United States. What's really screwed up about it is a lot of the research they do to develop these drugs, the United States taxpayer pays for that. And then they turn around and charge us the highest price for the drugs that we paid them to research. Again, a big, wide, broad brush, and this could be argued all day, but that's what's making people angry. Life-saving drugs, insulin, asthma medication, all that stuff is far too expensive here in the United States. And
I just don't know how they can get to that price. How can you make 12, I don't know, antibiotics? I don't know if the same price will be for this, but I'm just going to pretend it's some drug. For 12 tablets of some sort of antibiotics, it will cost 100 times more. Like, I don't understand. It doesn't even make sense how they can even get to that pricing. So strange. The companies at the top, how they manage to just pull out these figures as if they're not absolutely ridiculous.
A lot of people think that's what's tearing this country apart. Number 7, the pandemic. So this one's all over the board. The pandemic has obviously been a problem for everyone in the United States, whether you've been affected by a death, whether you've gotten COVID yourself, or you're one of the people that think it's a big giant conspiracy. Wherever you stand on it, fine. That's your own opinion. You do you. What isn't disputable is the way it's affected the economy and our lives. And a lot of people think that we're going down a path because of it, whether it was planned or not, whether you believe in the conspiracies or you just think, we're in a bad time. A lot of people think it's basically tearing up the fabric of the United States and how we live our...
When was this video made? A year ago. A year and a half ago, nearly. A year ago and 4 months. So it's a bit outdated in that.
Life. And it could have long-lasting effects on our economy and our lifestyle. Number 6, inflation. Inflation is kind of brought on by...
Inflation and the pandemic are kind of interlinked, to be honest.
The recovery of the pandemic. We're in the middle of the pandemic, yes, but we've learned to deal with it. We've learned to live with it to a degree, and things are getting better. Things are also getting more expensive because people are spending money again. We have supply chain problems, all that stuff. Most of it can be traced back to the pandemic, but others feel it's just different policies. Whatever the reason, this is a big problem for a lot of Americans, and they think that this is kind of destroying this country. Number 5, healthcare costs. You got Big Pharma, which supplies all of the drugs we need. Well, you also have the standard go to the hospital, see your doctor problems. It's like a double whammy. You get a high doctor bill because you broke your foot, had to go to the emergency room, and then you get hosed again when you buy the pills. But right now on this one, we're just focusing on the healthcare costs. And it's up there. Even though you get Medicare or Medicaid, there's still a good size chunk of money that comes out of your retirement if you have to go to the doctor. And as we get older, we all have to go to the doctor. The United States spends the most per capita on healthcare. Number 2 is Switzerland, and they spend about $7,000. Then there's about 8 other countries after Switzerland that spend between $6,000 and $7,000. The United States per capita spends over $10,000 a year on healthcare costs. And this, for a lot of people, is a serious problem, and they think it's destroying the United States. Most of those people are older people. When you're younger, you don't care. The doctor's just something you might have to go to if you break something, or if you're unlucky enough to have some kind of disease. When you get older, a lot of your money goes to your health care, and it sucks. Number 4, social media. Yes, the big villain, social media. This has been all over the news in recent years, pretty much since the 2016 presidential election. Different countries and organizations were basically weaponizing social media with misinformation. That's just a fact. I'm not saying which party it was against, because they all did it. As we all came aware of what's known as fake news, we realized that social media could be a problem. Fake news was basically something that was a news story that was fake in order for you to believe something that was false. Now, anything someone disagrees with, they just label it fake news. That kind of gives them the out. Oh, that's not true because it's fake news. No, it's just a stat you didn't like. Fake news is an actual fake thing posted on social media to sway your opinion and possibly your vote through fake information. Social media companies like Facebook, Twitter, everyone is now working to make these things better. I understand the dilemma they're in, though, because at what point do you deem something fake news or something that is misinformation and it's an opinion of someone else? They're kind of put in a position where they have to limit freedom of speech. And I, in a way, kind of feel sorry for the social media companies. They're put in a bad situation. But you can't deny it's affected the way we live our lives, both good, but in a lot of cases bad, especially when it comes to election season.
Fair enough.
Number 3, politicians. Now, we've kind of talked about politics.
Politicians in general, fair enough. That is probably the most realistic one
On this already. Corporate influence over politicians, the wealthy controlling politicians, but people just have a real problem with politicians in general. Since the first human being...
Politicians are just like, come on, man. I don't know why, I understand why you need people to make choices, but it's just like, they're so bad. Do they even do anything? From the UK perspective, it's just like, do they really do anything? They just get this crazy paycheck, and then they just say they're going to do things, and they don't do them, and it's just like, okay, well, that was fun whilst it lasted. You said you're going to do this stuff, you didn't do it, but keep lying to yourself.
Was elected to office way back in the Greek days, the Roman days, whatever. Politicians have been lying to the public. That's just what they do. Most of the time it comes in the form of telling you they're going to do something when they really have no intention of doing it. They just know that's what you need to hear. This was a lot easier for politicians to do back in the old days when they didn't have 24-hour news channels and the internet. Now, people call them on it a lot more, so they've gotten more crafty over time. And this, of course, in a lot of cases, has made even more people mistrust politicians. And that's what a lot of people think, that how the politicians are now is what's destroying the country. This kind of overlaps on number 1 that we'll get to in a minute. But 67% of Americans think politicians are doing more bad for the country than good. Number 2, the media. Now we're talking about the regular media. You know, you got your Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, Huffington Post, New York Times, whoever. The actual media. There was a time in the 1950s, 60s, and maybe even the 1970s where the American public trusted the media. Since the 1980s and 90s, that trust has been eroded, and it's continued to erode to this day. And honestly, it's going to continue. The media that we used to know and love back in our grandparents' day, it's long gone.
See, I don't know what it's really like, because I don't really watch the news, but when I did, it used to just be in like BBC. And I think the BBC is probably, in the grand scheme of things, pretty non-biased. It probably is biased certain ways, but I think there's always going to be a bias in some sort of aspects. But I think again, I don't know. I don't watch the news anymore, to be fair, so I can't really say that. But in the US, you've got some so far on either side, or that are just so biased to which way. Like, it's crazy. I remember like the Joe Rogan stuff, and I don't know. I remember seeing stories about that, and then they got someone on his show, and then it just was a whole mess. And it just sort of shows how the news, which is, when you're growing up, you're thinking, oh, the news, this is all just going to be stuff 100% correct. It's going to be telling you stuff that's happening in the world, but they like to skew it in their own way to get opinions either side, and it's just like a bit strange how news has turned into that, because I don't know if it was like that before. Was it? I don't think it would have been, but again, I don't know. I wasn't around 40 years ago, 30 years ago, but it's just strange how it all happens.
When it comes to which media outlet sucks the most, that really just depends on where you get your information from and what political party you associate yourself with.
Yep.
Back in the golden age of news media, there was no opinion. They just stated the facts. As we got more media outlets, they had to get your attention because you had a lot of other options. So things got a little more over dramatic. Things were said certain ways to keep your attention. And at some point, they found out opinion news media kept people's attention. That's another subject you have different camps on, but that's kind of how most people feel. That opinion news media is killing this country, but millions and millions of Americans watch it every single day.
That's why people just go on Twitter or they'll just look on YouTube and follow some certain people who will be a lot more central in their opinions and not really share their opinions. They'll just state the news because people are just tired of that. I mean, again, I never really was into the news, but I used to watch it and it never seemed like it was one way. It was just stating the news of what's going on in the world. So that's just weird, man.
Day. Down below. And number
one is going to be something. He said it's related to number 3. What was number 3? Politicians. Number 1.
Political divide. Back to politics we go, and this one is just focusing on us.
Has there always been a divide, though? I don't know how it would have been, but has there always been a divide? I guess it's just getting bigger, right? Because they say it's getting bigger, but I don't actually know if it, like how it was 50 years ago, 70 years ago, 20 years ago. It seems like it is, but is that just the media saying it is, or is it really? Because I guess all the stuff is going on. It sort of shows that it is like all these just different things. Yearly, there's just things going on all the time, either side.
And the political divide Americans have. There used to be a day where you could actually have a conversation about their views on politics and policies and everything like that. Nowadays, it's filled with hatred. If you vote differently than I do, I hate you is kind of the theme for a lot of Americans these days. Earlier, we talked about the zealots, the political zealots we have that come into the comment section every single video with nothing but political nonsense. It's good to be engaged in the political process. That's just like apple pie and baseball here in the United States. It's part of our thing, but now it's turned into a hatred and aggressive stance towards anyone that dares vote differently than you. And this just isn't one party. This is all parties, both sides of the major parties and independents. Now, I've seen stats where only 20% of the American population really pays attention to political crap until an election year. But that 20% that just lives and breathes politics, they've consumed their life with it, that's what we all see, like I said, on Twitter, in the comment section of videos, on Facebook posts. And yeah, according to the polls and the surveys I did, this is the number one thing most Americans think is wrong with this country right now.
That would be so... Imagine that being your hobby. Just politics. Is that not a bit boring? I understand politics are important, but if that's like your hobby... God damn, that just sounds depressing as hell. Just always obsessed with politics. Like, I don't really care, but I guess obviously when it's important, you got to vote. It makes sense. But come on, for the rest of your life, just try and not be so stressed about certain things. But I guess that's just why it's not for me. But some people will look at that and be like, how could you not feel that way or whatever? But that's just how people's opinions are. But I feel that just about everyone agrees on what the problems are. The big disagreements come from what we feel should be done about them. Yeah. I'm a Brit and I was surprised to see a democracy is listed as flawed, whereas the UK is 100% clean. Money in your politics is the difference. In the UK, there are no ads. Oh, there's not? Okay, then there we go. For politicians, just one broadcast by each party every 4 years. Oh, damn, that's quite interesting. I didn't know that. I mean, politics here don't seem great, but... yeah, interesting. Hopefully you enjoyed this, and yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. But yeah, until next time, like, subscribe. Peace.